Namaste and welcome to Palliversation, a palliative care endeavor by the Phoenix-based organization Akshay Bhasha. This is Dr. Bhagyashree Barlinge. Today, I'm going to introduce you to a person who chose to practice general medicine and palliative care in the dim-lit corner of our country. Such corners are called Bharat Desh. Every society, every nation has layers of civilization, waves of socio-economic evolution. Everybody likes to ride these waves, be at the front, go with the flow that takes us all away from the needy, the poor, the suffering elements of the society. But Dr. Ashita Singh dared to think differently. Instead of settling in a big city, she decided to come to Chinchpada, a small town in Nandurbar district in Khandesh region of Maharashtra at the border of Maharashtra and Gujarat. She could easily have had a flourishing practice in any big city in India. After all, she is very well trained in medical field. Dr. Ashita Singh is empowered with an MD in internal medicine, and this would have her sufficed. Enough, good degree, great degree. But no, she didn't stop there. She went for a national fellowship in palliative medicine, and then she had fellowship in infectious diseases as well. And again, she didn't stop there. She has MA in bioethics as well. Hats off to her. She is a physician at a secondary level rural hospital in Maharashtra and head of EHAs, that means Emmanuel Hospital Association Palliative Care Service, overseeing 15 rural home-based palliative care programs in North India. I'm going to talk to her about her work in Chinchpada, her palliative care initiative there, and about her article published in the Journal of IHPC. Most of us have romantic ideas about rural India, but if you see the pictures posted in her article, you will feel that time is standing still. What does that mean when time stands still? It means that nothing happens except the bodily functions for human beings. The trees grow, the rivers flow, the winds blow. But for a human being, it's not enough. For certain people, there are no possibilities left in their so-called human life. Impossibility of any possibilities is the philosophical definition of death. So, are people living death in such areas? Yes, they are. The answer is sad and true. In order to get time moving again, you need compassionate and empathetic human beings around you who understand suffering, not machines, human beings. That is what Dr. Ashita Singh and her team do in Nandurbar. The words dedication, commitment, devotion are time-born, overused words, but they regain their power when they are brought into action by people like Dr. Ashita Singh. Let me welcome her to Palliversation. Namaste and good evening, Dr. Ashita Singh.
Good evening, Bhagyashree. Thank you so much for having me and for that really warm and glowing introduction. I don't think I deserve that. Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
It's my honor, and I'm very pleased to have you here today because this is a very, very important discussion from so many angles. So let me ask you my first question. You have practiced for 20 years in rural India. Now, India as a country is young, like the Republic of India is young, but the civilization of India is very old. The thinking is old. So, such thinking, it could be medieval thinking for a layer of society. You must be coming across those people very often. So, in that age old way of thinking, is there something suggestive of palliative care, such as advanced care planning, dying at home, not medicalizing death? staying away from machines. And we often talk about different ashramas, grihasthashram, then sannyasashram, vanaprasthashram. So do people still think like that?
Yeah, Bhagishri, I think you have a point there. I think that there are a lot of pockets, in our country, especially in rural areas, which where people have not really been impacted very much in their thinking by things like education and technological advancement. So, because of this, it's not a good thing. But because of this, there are certain tendencies that people in communities here have, which sort of would naturally resonate with some of the things that we palliative care professionals would advocate for. Like you were talking about medicalization of death and the negative connotations that that has. I think that's really not a problem in these areas because it is not hard to have a conversation with a family about limiting inappropriate aggressive treatment or dying at home is something that they really have a strong affinity for their homes, and most of them prefer to die at home. But I think while those are good things, it also is a reflection of the fact that people are only too willing to run away from medical treatment or to not access it when it is appropriate and when it is needed. So usually they have so it's the reverse problem of not accessing adequate medical care and medical treatment, even for curable conditions.
Yes. That's a very sad scenario. In one palliative care article, I read that 8 deaths in India is equal to 1 death in US. So we don't value life. That's what it meant. I thought that we need to change it somewhere, and maybe palliative care will change it. That's what I feel. So do people accept death as part of life? Is that what you're telling me?
People do accept death as a part of life, and it is something that they just very stoic in a very stoic and almost passive way, take it as the normal occurrence, which I think again in a way is beautiful. Because many of us in more elite communities, we want to fight death to the very end. Whereas here there's a very quiet and calm acceptance of death. But again, it's on the other extreme. Like I said before, sometimes it's just accepted too easily when it could be prevented. And you really have to fight on their behalf to preserve their lives when it is possible.
And they still have a family structure of like 3-4 generations living together, right? So they take care of each other in a way if they can. Yeah,
that's one of the biggest strengths of communities like this, because in spite of them being impoverished in many ways, they have such a strong fabric of family and community. So that interdependence and even their identities are actually linked with, within their communities and within their families.
Yes.
As opposed to our individualistic culture of the West and more progressive modern Indian societies.
Exactly. And when I was reading about principles of ethics in palliative care, autonomy is a big deal in US, like patient is the boss, patient is going to decide this and that. But in the corner of the book, it says that if you ever come across an Asian woman and if you tell her to make all the decisions, you will be isolating her from her family. And I thought that was a kind of a humorous statement in a way. I don't know if it is true from your perspective. Have you come across such occurrences?
Yes, very much. In fact, this used to be one of my favorite themes while I was doing my MA in bioethics, about autonomy and how it looks in different cultures and how it looks in parts of the world.
Very nice.
And how sometimes we sort of minimize the importance of autonomy that is found in interdependence. So when a person expresses their autonomy and their identity as a part of a larger community, that is a very valid expression of autonomy, And I think in our culture, in general, Asian cultures and our rural communities display that very strongly. If you have a decision to be made, there'll be 50 people who are involved.
Exactly.
And we are like, oh no, but the patient has to make the decision. But the patient finds their security and their identity in that community.
That is so beautiful. Yeah. So you're a small part of a big tapestry, if you will, of the society. So that's so beautiful. So there is no such thing as advanced care planning in the community that you practice. It's mainly the decision making in ICU or at the 11th hour.
Actually, that is, we may not have a document for advanced care planning, but what we have built into our palliative care work is to be able to have conversations with the patient and the family and be able to sort of document what their wishes and desires are. So once that is done, it may not be an assigned document or a legal. Once we have had those conversations and documented them in our papers, in our files, it becomes easier to refer to them at a later point when the patient is not able to make their own decisions. So it may not be a formal way, but I think it's a very, very important part. And I have to confess that for us, it's like a huge achievement when we are able to reach that stage of preparation for death. And that happens when we've had a long relationship with the patient and a family where the trust becomes very deep and they are willing to go into those areas of discussion.
Very nice.
But it is there in that form.
It is. Yes. So when I was looking at the photos, I thought that you must have come across some unusual diagnosis or combination of diagnosis. I mean, the other day you were telling me that there is a patient with tetanus. I mean, this is news to me. I've never seen a patient of tetanus. I practice in US for last 20 years. So in rural India, people don't even reach the age where they start getting diseases of aging. You are still struggling with infectious diseases, complications of infectious diseases. So what are the diagnoses you are coming across, and what kind of patients you are seeing in palliative care mainly?
We do have, quite a spread. So cancer is rampant. There is so much of cancer, which is mostly related to tobacco chewing in these communities. Yes, oral cancer, oral and upper GI cancers. That is one of the things that we strongly address, focusing on school health education and awareness so that children in the next generation are made aware of these risks and, habit forming, helping them with those thought processes. So a lot of cancer, but we also have, even though this is an impoverished, lean body weight community, there is still a lot of most likely genetically mediated hypertension, diabetes, and vascular disease. We have a lot of that as well. We also have tuberculosis, which is the top killer.
Yes,
actually. So much of tuberculosis, and there's enough evidence, that shows that tribal populations, like ours is a tribal population, have higher, incidence of tuberculosis and poorer outcomes for various reasons. So that is one of the things that is the biggest killer.
TB that you're seeing in your community is associated with AIDS, or it is independent TB only?
Yes, it is mostly without AIDS. It's just tuberculosis. And most of it is drug-sensitive tuberculosis. That is the other tragedy. Yeah, and sickle cell disease. This is another big burden here.
I see.
We have a lot of death from sickle cell disease, a lot of premature death, and a lot of suffering because of crises.
That's sad. Yeah.
Crises. Yeah. But we are very glad to have morphine to be able to offer people with acute sickle cell crises, and that's really revolutionized. Yes.
Yeah. The chronic illnesses that you're talking about, they are mostly due to neglect and ignorance, you think, and maybe related to malnutrition in a roundabout way?
Malnutrition, I think, just colors all disease in these areas. Because if you have a malnourished community and then they have sickle cell disease, then they're already starting off with a very low hemoglobin level. And then because of the hemolysis that occurs in sickle cell disease chronically, their hemoglobin levels are, terribly. I've never seen hemoglobins as low as the lowest one I have seen here is 0.9 grams of hemoglobin in a lady who actually survived. She was on the ventilator and she actually survived.
Oh my God. Maybe the ventilator settings had to be changed because of the low hemoglobin. I can't believe it.
Lactic acidosis. I know it's
we should have different ventilators for Bharat Desh. Yeah. That's sad. I'm laughing, but it's very sad.
Severe anemia is a problem. Their diets are so deficient. There is no food security for, it is an issue. We have children dying of hunger in our district.
That should not happen in 2023. That should not happen. So, didn't you tell me about a case that a patient has tetanus and TB? I can't believe two major diseases. Oh my God. I mean, AIDS getting TB is different, but tetanus and TB is like, oh my God. There's a lion and a tiger in the same cage. Like,
it's just, and to think that, all you need to be safe from tetanus is 1 2 rupee injection every 10 years.
So you have rural community, which is like wannabe city dwellers, that part. And then there is community that is nomadic, which is coming from the forest, jungles, like all the Mowglis. how do you put them together? Because I'm sure there's a lot of different levels of talks you must be doing. You should write a book on palliative care in rural India. I think what you're practicing is totally different than what we practice in US or big cities. So people who come from forest, they are getting tetanus, right? Because they don't have schools and then the children are not immunized.
In some of these communities, they're migrants. So for about half the year, they will migrate to another area to be harvesters in sugarcane fields. And so they move from their villages and are stationed elsewhere for about half the year, about 6 months. So then they have the option of leaving their children in ashram schools that have been established by the government, but many of them don't want to leave their children and go far away. So they'll just take their children out of school. So they end up having this, break in their education. And then it's not a high priority because you have a completely, illiterate family. For them, their daily bread and subsistence is more important than they can't look at the long-term gains of education for their children. So it's just easier to just carry them wherever they go, So there's a very low priority for education, and we can see the effects of that down the generations. So I think, yes, the awareness and then just not being in the systems of care that would ensure that they receive these bare minimum interventions like vaccination.
So the Astana declaration that I learned from Padma Shri Dr. Rajgopal from Palliative, India, that the WHO tells us that the healthcare should go to the patient. You don't have the patient coming to the healthcare all the time because it may not be possible. So what changes would you like to see happening in the system in regards to palliative care? Is there anything specifically you would like to say?
The key is to integrate palliative care into the public system, so that it becomes something that is a deliverable at every point of healthcare delivery.
Yes.
Our systems. It cannot remain a standalone little corner. It has to be something that just pervades our health care delivery system. And I think that there is a lot of hope for that because, generally we have good systems in place, even though there are challenges to the smooth running of those systems. But the way that it's laid out, it is possible for everyone to receive palliative care at some level. It may not be the whole depth of, holistic care. You cannot aim for that height from the word go. But if we were to say that, okay, in our villages, in our district, no one must die in intractable pain. No one must die with a wound that is not cared for. That's not hard to achieve. I think that is not hard to achieve. And you don't need a whole lot of technological advancement. You just need enough enabling of a critical mass of people, all the people on the ground. They know what to do for pain. If they know what to do for pain. And if they are empowered with that, then our people are loving, caring people. They will be able to. And I think that is achievable.
You're so passionate, and I learned a lot from you. And the most important thing I learned from your technology is not important, it's the human touch, the human presence.
Absolutely.
Human being going to the Astana Declaration again, human beings going to other human beings to mitigate suffering. That's what our goal is. This is just wonderful.
And I think because excellent palliative care needs caring communities. So if we are able to engender and model those caring communities, so much we can do for palliative care. I think in many ways it's easier than to do other things which need more. Whereas here you already have that fabric of close-knit communities, close-knit families. So if we just empower them with the tools that are required for basic palliative care, I think there's so much we can achieve. We can lead the way for how healthcare it can actually move proximally. If palliative care becomes the thing that we model, that is done beautifully, that can be the model on which tertiary and secondary and primary and preventive care.
Very good. So in the cities, home-based palliative care is very important, and it should be there. It should be integrated in the healthcare system. But in rural areas, if the families are they're living together, the generations are living together, so they may not need home-based care, but they may need training of their younger generation to give care to the older population. So it may be integrated in the school system, or they should have free classes in the hospitals and things like that. That's what I'm thinking aloud when listening to your thoughts.
That's actually, so we have a four-pronged approach for our palliative care programs. What we do is person-centered care for the person who's suffering, going and reaching them and putting them at the center, and then training their families in caring for them, because our teams can only go, we can't be there all the time, whereas the family is there all the time, and empowering them in ways to care for their patient, for their loved ones, and then awareness and networking. So awareness raising in schools and colleges among all stakeholders, and networking with the different stakeholders in the community, so that the palliative care, it becomes a movement. It's not just us doing this little thing here, but the ripple effect reaching a large number of people in the community. So everyone knows what palliative care is and how they can contribute to that.
Exactly. I think palliative care is a concept, and not only medical people, but all the non-medical people, all the society community should know about it. So the other point I wanted to make is the challenges that you face, the different languages you come across. So tell me more about it. It was so interesting.
So most of our people are, from the Bhil tribe, and there are different language groups among them, and different languages with different dialects. So, and it's a very beautiful, sweet, soulful language. They have their songs are really soulful, and in general they're very, very, I think, very reflective people, very sweet, very gentle people. I mean, the most lovable people. I've never seen beautiful people like this. It's just
you have a very open mind. You are very broad-minded, and I appreciate it so much. So I think even whether you know their language or not, they will understand your language, because you speak the language of compassion and care. So I think that's what you're bringing to the front and center of healthcare, and that's what your article is talking about. So I have translated in Marathi, and I hope it gets published in another prestigious Marathi newspaper or magazine, and so that everybody knows about your work, about you. And thank you so much for joining today. You are discovering suffering, treating it, managing it, preventing it. You are palliative care. So thank you for joining today. Appreciate your time. In her article, Dr. Ashita Singh tells a story of a 25-year-old man with cerebral palsy who has never received any medical care. She writes ardently, stories like these need to raise some very pointed questions for us as a nation that boasts of being a flourishing economy, offering technologically advanced medical tourism at affordable prices for the elite who travel here from various countries. We have come to accept as normal the preventable health-related suffering of masses of our own people, turning our faces away in denial, when in reality, we know that these are gross violations of human dignity. Hope the people in power who can make a change are listening to this interview. I urge them to go to the website of IAHPC, read this article, listen to this doctor, help the needy, take a critical look at the social system set up, ignoring the disabled completely. The government benefits never reach the intended recipients of the society. Be aware of this. This is an eye-opening article. I wish Dr. Ashita Singh the best in her career. She surely has illuminated a corner of our beloved country, Bharat Desh. Namaste.